Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity, doing a live stream here, and this is a format we're using. Haven't used this format with four people before. It looks kind of like the Brady Bunch, so I'm just thinking like, here's the story of four YouTubers who decided to do a live stream on the Expanse.
There's enough of us to crew the Rossi. That's what's important here.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, we're here to talk about one of my personal favorite shows, The Expanse. We're talking about the latest season, season 4. Joined here, got the gang all together again. We used to do our live streams on season 3. So first, joining me, Don Willi. Haven't done a stream in a while. Good to see you again, man. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for inviting me. It's always glad to be. I'm always glad to be here with you guys. Happy New Year to everyone. And let's get talking about Bobby and the crew.
Absolutely. And Darren, good to see you again.
Mark, always a pleasure to be over here on your channel. Very looking forward to diving into season 4. The Expanse has been amazing again this season, and yeah, there is definitely much to dive into. So looking forward to that.
And of course, Akton Tamko. You did an Expanse review recently, right? But
yes,
anyway,
I did do an Expanse review, and I know that you watched it because you commented on it or you talked to me about it. But
did I? Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it's good to be here too. I'm looking forward to talking with all three of you guys about The Expanse.
All right, cool. So let's just go ahead and jump into our overall thoughts on season 4. General thoughts. We'll start with you, Don Willi. What did you think of season 4? Because I know, as I said, I saw Atkins' video, but I have no idea what you thought of it, Don. So what did you think of season 4 of The Expanse?
All right. So very strong with the Rosie crew as always. I'll be honest with you, I was a little disappointed by my girl Bobby's story a little bit because I wasn't sure how it fit into the larger plot line. Ava Sorella, her deal was a little shaky at times, but I felt that they brought it home towards the end. And oh man, the stuff with the Belters, woo, that was man. So I mean, overall, I would say that out of 10, I'd probably give this season an 8.5.
Oh, I was supposed to say that to the end, Don, but that's all good. But anyway,
don't put me at the airlock.
Where? Oh, Darren, what did you think of season 4?
I really enjoyed it. I have to say, The Expanse has been one of my favorite shows. It's one of my more anticipated, and I think mainly because it's one of the last of the real hardcore sci-fi, just classic humans going out into space, exploring the universe around. They've been doing amazing stories up through now. Now we're through the gate. We have a whole change of atmosphere, I guess you could say, not just making a new planet pun there, but because we have colonization really kind of being the main theme. Can we, the new Old West out into space, can we step out into these worlds? What kind of dangers are we going to run into? So I think they did a really good job of sort of encapsulating that concern, as well as great character stuff, pushing more of the proto-molecule, finding out what's been going on with Miller, plus Ava Sorella's whole thing. Bobby, really, to me, an unexpected direction, going back to Mars, and now just what the effect of the war, the rings, and everything else has had to this world whose whole identity has been around one thing. So, I mean, they had a lot of stuff to hit on, but I really think they spent enough time to advance each story to keep it interesting and not feel like at any point things were dragging. They did a really good job for pacing. In fact, there's really only one or two small points that I didn't like, but that's almost nitpicking. It was one that I was excited when it was coming. I was bummed when it was getting close to the end. Oh, I do believe we have more to look forward to coming up after this. So, yeah, definitely good time.
Awesome. And Abkin, your thoughts on these?
I really like this season. I didn't feel that it had any like a blow you away, knock your socks off moments as previous seasons have had, but I also didn't feel like there was anything really terrible. I had a hard time coming up with my least favorite moment for the show when I was doing my review because there wasn't anything that was really that bad. I thought it was pretty consistent all throughout and just a very solid, good season from beginning to end. And you may or may not recall, well, you know, if you would watch my season 4 review, I've mentioned that season 3 was my least favorite season. I didn't like any of the new characters. I didn't like the rushed feel, especially the second half of the season. I thought this season was a huge improvement over last season, in my opinion. And though season 3 did have more big moments than season 4 did, season 4 was just good and consistent all the way through. So, yeah, I really, really enjoyed the season. And I've heard that not just for you, Mark, but for a lot of people, this is generally considered the least favorite of the books, the book that this was based off of. But the season certainly was pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. And my thoughts are pretty similar to yours, where I thought this was pretty solid throughout. I mean, we differ because I actually like season 3 better, so I'm actually on the fence of which season's better, season 3 or 4. They're both good in different ways for me, so it's hard to choose. But I did think this was a very solid season, and I think you're right. And see, I'm the only one here that's a snobby book reader. All my attempts to get you, Apkin, to read books fail, but whatever. But anyway, yeah, you're right, is that generally speaking, book 4 is considered least favorite. Like, I didn't know that until recently. I thought it was the least favorite, but when I posted my review on it, a lot of people agreed with me, and I saw that people tend to maybe like this one the less. And part of the reason why, or at least for me, was the book was entirely focused on Illis, and I had this sense of isolation and just focusing on this one storyline. And the show totally changed that. The show opened the world up. We got Alpha Sorella, we got Bobby. Now, maybe their storylines weren't as interesting as past seasons, but I'm glad we at least saw what they were up to. And the Belters, of course, were amazing. And so I think personally that this season did, even though I don't know if it's better than season 3, I think clearly it did a much better job at adapting the books than season 3 did, which is kind of where I stand on it. So in my opinion, season 3, they took my favorite book and kind of reduced it a little bit and make it not as good as the book. Where here, they took my least favorite book and upped it and made it better. So really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed both seasons. But yeah. And Dan in the chat saying, I haven't read the books, but I hear book 5 is amazing. It is, but I will not give you any spoilers. This will be completely spoiler free, so you don't have to worry about that. Anyway, let's go ahead and let's jump into some specific storylines. Let's start with the Illis storyline, and it doesn't matter. We can go character by character, but if everything blends together, that's okay because this storyline is kind of all intermingled anyway. But we can start. Well, let's start with like the first half of the season where Holden and first arrives on Illis. I mean, we get a bit of Holden and Earth at the beginning, and the Rosnautic crew, and as they travel through the system, they call all the old buddies, hey, Bobby, how's it going? Hey, drummer, on their way out, and once they're there, you see the tense situation with you have the Belters that settle the planet, and the RC security team that think they have the mineral mining rights that they're trying to kick the Belters off the planet so this rich corporation can get all the money, and Holden's just concerned about the fucking weird alien shit going on down there, which I thought was a really sort of interesting dynamic. So let's open it up, get some of your thoughts. Start with you, Darren. What were some of your thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, I like the opening. I like the fact they didn't spend too much time with the traveling and getting to Illis. It might have been a little, quick of like, yeah, let's stop by and say hello to Ava Sorella, and we're going to go and say hi to Mom, and we're going to go and say hi to Bobby, and we're going to, but it does get us back and reconnects us with all the characters and keeps the pace going forward. So that was something I did really like about just that whole opening bit. Let's see. Amos was having a phone call with oh god, now I can't remember, Mao's daughter, who was responsible for the explosions.
Yeah, Clarissa Mao. Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a cool little thing that they had some connection right there, and Amos had sort of given her the opportunity to make her own choice to step out of the world or airlock if she had wanted to. So, I mean, I kind of like the little dynamic. I mean, everyone knows Amos is by far my favorite character. I love his straightforwardness. He doesn't BS anything. And the fact that that's sort of his little conversation with Krista about how to survive, you know, take whatever they give you, don't get anything back, get your stuff done. I thought that was kind of a cool way to transition away from that previous adventure and sort of bridge over into this one. Doing the same thing with Bobby. Always great seeing Drummer. I loved those little connections. You know, like I said, everybody having their little moment. Yeah, so I mean, mostly I think they did a good job in keeping the pace going, connecting the adventure we had before, and really pushing us right into Ellis and what was going on between the RCA and the Belter colonizers.
Cool. And I just want to address real quick with Belinda in the chat saying that they didn't have a bigger budget. They keep getting better at what they do. They did have their 13-episode budget that's spread over 10 episodes, and the Amazon service has really upped the quality. Yeah, that's what I got, because my initial reaction after watching the pilot was, they have a bigger budget. But what I heard from so many different sources of people is actually, no, the budget is the same, and they've just gotten better at what they do, so it seems like a bigger budget. But I will say the ending, I can kind of tell they were running out of budget, but that's getting to that later. Anyway, Akton, your thoughts on the first half of the story and the whole situation with Ellis?
Yeah, I'm glad we got all the saying hi to everybody kind of out of the way quickly, and I thought we dove into the storyline pretty quickly, which was good. It's funny, Darren mentioned that scene. I actually named that scene as my least favorite of the season because, like I said, there wasn't any really bad scenes, so I couldn't think of any. But the one where, like, I called her Alba. She went by Alba initially, and then we found that her name was Clarissa.
Oh, it was Melba.
Melba. Did I call it? Okay, Melba, Clarissa, whatever her name was. The unnecessary cameo where they said, "Oh, we'll talk to you later," and they never talk again, and it seemed unnecessary. And I didn't like that character. So, but other than that, I'm kind of glad that oh hi Bobby, oh hi Drummer. We get that out of the way. We just dive right into the storyline. And when we're talking about the entire first half of the season, I thought they did very good with character building. Maybe not as good as world building, because I didn't really fully grasp the deal until I watched your video, Mark, because you read the books about what the deal was with Murtry's dudes and the corporation that they worked for. I didn't think that was really explained very clearly. I got a much better understanding of it from watching your video, Mark. Do you want to just give a brief what that's all about? Yeah,
sure. I mean, because that's another thing I thought the show did kind of a poor job of explaining. Like in the show's version, they said, "Oh, Murtry and the science team are there to help you," but that's not the case. Even in the show itself. So basically, the Belters settled on this planet because it was rich in lithium, and they can get rich off of. But the UN and Mars officially, legally gave rights to this big corporation called Royal Charter Energy, or RCE. And so RCE are going there to officially mine it. So they want to block the Belters from selling it. They want to kick the Belters out, and they want to take all the mining rights for themselves. And that's the only thing that Murtry was concerned with. He didn't give a crap about the proto molecule and they shit that out of Sorellis. And in the books, they made it clear. In the books, they actually showed up like months before Holden showed up. So I'm not quite sure why they changed it, because I think it made it much more clear the conflict between Murtry and Holden.
Yeah, and I mean, they did make that clear that Murtry didn't give a crap about the Belters and he just wanted to lift them for himself. But I was just a little confused on that corporation that he worked for, and I didn't understand exactly why they had more of a claim to that planet than why they even felt they had more of a claim to that planet than the Belters did, because my understanding of it was that they were just sending in, I mean, that they had that blockade and they weren't letting people go in. So it's like, wait a minute, why is these dudes get to go in? Like, I didn't get that. I don't think it explained it very well in the show. But
yeah, they had a legal charter from the UN where the Belters had no legal right to be there. So they called them squatters a lot in the book, saying that they weren't supposed to be there legally. But really, they explained that the only reason the RC went there is because the Belters were already there, because they knew the planet was safe. So they were basically going there to kick them out.
Right.
Well, to me, that makes a little more sense, because that was the one thought that I did have. Is I was like, there are all of these rings that opened up. How come all of these people are only going to this one place? But I suppose, I think there's an even larger comment to be made, not only of taking advantage of the Belters, but class-wise, of like, oh, you took the risk and it's okay. Well, then it's ours now,
And also, sort of not to interrupt everyone, but they explained later in the book that the reason why there's so much lithium was because the protomolecule creators used that world as like a military base. And that's why it's rich in lithium. So that's why you have all the protomolecule shit going on that particular planet. But anyway, sorry, Akton.
Anyway, I asked you to explain it because I was unclear on that. And so that was the one part where I didn't think they explained. I didn't think the world building was as good, but I thought that the character building was really good. Right away, you knew, you knew what Murtry was about. I liked him as kind of a villainous character. And then I'm forgetting their names now. LV was the scientist lady, right?
Yes.
Her name was LV. Yes. And Dr. Lucia. All those characters within the first, 3 to 4 episodes, they are very, they're established really well, and they start developing connections with our known characters. So right away, I was into these new characters within the first half of the season, which not to talk about season 3 again, but I didn't feel that way in season 3. Here, I definitely did, and I especially like Lucia's connection with Naomi and how that plays out throughout the season.
Cool. All right, Don, sorry I've been neglecting you. Your thoughts on this first half of the season, the Illis situation?
Yeah, the Illis situation was kind of crazy. First off, they got Berg Gorman, who love him as an actor and just about everything I've ever seen him in. So for him to be the guy, it was like, is he a bad guy or is he really not such a bad guy? Because
Don, sorry, to your point, Dan in the chat says, has the actor who played Murtry, Born Gorman, has he ever played a good guy? Do you know that? Because I've never seen him as a good guy.
I mean, well, you could kind of say Pacific Rim.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot he was in that. Yeah.
And even really in Dark Knight Rises, he wasn't he was a henchman, but he wasn't necessarily a bad guy. So
I would count that.
He was sniveling and sniping. Yeah, he was enough.
But yeah, in this one, he was making some very good points as to why he was doing some of the brutal things he was doing. Now, obviously later on, it's like, oh no, this guy is full bad guy. But the first half of the season, he made some very good points as to why he was kind of dealing in brutality, even though it was still kind of like, oh, come on, man, you are slaughtering people without trial. It's like, yeah, well, there's no laws out here, bro. So, obviously seeing the Rousey crew back together again and kind of seeing the dynamic where, Naomi was having issues with being on the planet, and that's kind of a side effect of her being a Delta. That was kind of interesting because, you start to find out, Belters may not be able to be here long term just due to the fact that they weren't born, in the same kind of atmosphere, having that much gravity, so it kind of messes with the equilibrium and other other physiological things. That was kind of interesting, especially because you had a whole settlement there, and it was kind of like, well, how are these people going to be able to survive? Can they survive? And just the back and forth, and it's funny because that kind of brings about the whole. It's not an allegory, but it definitely brings up things of colonization and I wouldn't even say indigenous rights, because the Belters weren't indigenous to that planet, but they were there first. But here comes the big corporations like, nope, we got this big piece of paper that says we got the claim here and you got to go, bro. And that kind of whole struggle. So yeah, that was pretty interesting to see. And then you throw Holden into the mix, and everything always goes just so smoothly when James Holden and company arrive on a planet and they've got proto molecule involved. So yeah, that was first half of the season on Illis was definitely a bit of a roller coaster, but I mean I loved every minute of it. I've got no complaints about that stuff at all.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah,
Mark?
sure. Go ahead.
And
Yeah.
like he brought up the point about Naomi and how she had to adapt to the atmosphere. I thought that was really interesting because I actually it never occurred to me until that point. Oh yeah, I guess Naomi's not really ever been on a planet on the show. Like I didn't really think about that would be like a thing that she would have to go through. So I liked how they really showed that. That it's makes it feel like a little more real, not just we beamed down on the planet and everything's perfect, and like that you have to really adjust to the planet if you're used to living in space. I really like that aspect of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I guess I was used to it because they explore that a lot in the books. But we'll get. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I was just going to say, and they did an amazing job, I think, having that first landing scene and Naomi stepping out is kind of letting that be her moment in some ways. Is her introduction to the planet is her introduction to first being on a planet. I think that was something that they handled really beautifully. It was really a nice choice, both from just a directorial storytelling standpoint, and also as the crew that let her go forward and let her stumble and pick herself back up. That was, part of the whole process. I just thought that was a really sweet way of introducing Illis.
Absolutely. And Dan in the chat was saying pretty much the same thing. The best scene of the entire season was Naomi walking on the planet for the first time in her lifetime. So cool. And yeah, that's another thing that wasn't in the books. In the books, the Naomi stayed on the Rosnate. They dropped Amos and Amos and Holden off and went right back up into orbit. So I think it was a really good. It was a nice change. I think the show has always done a better job of exploring some of these other side characters like Naomi. But anyway, I do want to get into Naomi. We're going to get more into her a bit later. I did want to mention about the Belters that they sort of explained that the ones who were on the planet, like during the season, that they have acclimated to the planet, so they're actually fine. Like none of them are going to die because they've been there long enough. Their bodies have gotten used to it. But a few of them didn't make it. Like Lucia mentioned, a couple died, and then the others who couldn't live on the planet were up in the Baba Bacola, the ship that's still in orbit. So, but the ones that are on the planet, they'll be fine they've acclimated to the planet. But anywho, let's get into Holden. Let's talk about Holden's storyline, because I've heard the opinion that some people actually didn't like him this season. They thought he was a bit too whiny or too conflicted or whatever. I actually thought it was amazing. I think I was wondering how the show would handle, because the books he was always kind of this hero type who was front and center, but in the show he wasn't really like that for the first two seasons. So I was wondering how they would handle this transition to him being so front and center. I think they did an amazing job, and I think elevating a lot of side characters helps a lot, and also just having his hyper focus be on the weird alien shit, which arguably it should be, while people were killing themselves around them. And eventually when he had to deal with Mercury, he had to deal with Mercury. And I think, having him do the final showdown and all that, I really enjoyed it. Anyway, Apkin, what were your thoughts on Holden's storyline this year?
Well, I actually named him as my favorite character of the season. I thought that to see the character development from season one, I thought this has been a really well developed, and now he's a real well-rounded character. I talked about in my review how the earlier season where he was in that Moby Dick phase, I didn't really care for that so much. He kind of grew out of that, and he's grown past that in the last season. Trying to figure out if he's crazy with the whole, talking to Miller thing, and he's kind of come to place of acceptance for that. So now he's just this full, well-rounded character. And I loved how he didn't take crap from Murtry either, even when he's trying to deal with the proto-molecule stuff and alien stuff. He doesn't approach Murtry the same way that Amos does, but he's very much like, this is going to stop now. You're going to stop doing this for now. We don't have time for this crap. Like how I loved how he just took Murtry on head on, and it wasn't a confrontational kind of way, the way that Amos was. It was just like, this is how it is. You're going to stop doing this shit right now. And I loved Holden. I thought he was badass in this.
Cool. Don, what were some of your thoughts?
James Holden. Listen, you know what? He is the hero that the show needs and it deserves. I mean, he's one of the few, truly rational thinkers when it comes to this whole situation. He, maybe because he's been through the ringer when it comes to the proto molecule and having to deal with, Miller's ghost and trying to figure out, like, what does this all mean? Where is it taking me? And it's like, you would figure him being the guy who's been right all this time, maybe people might want to listen to him, but it seems like the only person, in government who wants to pay him any mind is Avasarella, and unfortunately that, hasn't really worked out for her too well. But yeah, it's like, hey, I'm the guy who's been dealing with the proto molecule thing for all this time. I'm the one who told you about all the bad shit that was happening. And yeah, you're still like, oh, it's fucking James Holden and him with his ghostly bullshit. Yeah, I don't see Miller. Do you see Miller? I don't see Miller. And it's kind of like, he's been right. Okay. He's been right. Listen to the fucking guy. Okay. I mean, so yeah, I love what they've done with his character. And he's not my favorite character, but he's definitely in my top 3, and I mean, yeah. And like, Akton said, he's definitely grown from where he was in the first season to now. And, he's a much more confident leader, even though he's dealing with like the galaxy's biggest assholes right now, it seems.
All right.
Love James Holden.
Cool. So Darrin, your thoughts on Holden?
Yeah, I really like how they've matured Holden through this, and I think they found the best position for him because Holden's only concerned with the big picture. And I think that's allowed him to steer through the whole problem with Murtry and the Belters and such so much, as he's like, you guys are squabbling over like the little pickings around. Meanwhile, this mountain's about to fall and crush us all. We should be more concerned with the mountain that's about to crush us than your little whiny stuff. And I like the fact that they've given him that larger point of view and done it through the sense of responsibility. He feels responsible for opening up all of these worlds, for potentially releasing the proto-molecule, for whatever this big, giant potential enemy thing that's still unknown out there. Maybe he's the one that opened the door that would allow humanity to thus be destroyed by it. So he's approaching everything from that sense of responsibility. And I think that helps keep him balanced. It helps keep him separate from the petty arguments that are around and keep him focused on what's really driving the overall season, which is, the exploration of this world and what the proto-molecule has done, and the bit with Miller too. Even his relationship with Miller, I think, has worked nicely. One, he's more understanding and accepting, and this is just what we've got to do, almost as a buddy that he sort of misses, and then having that realization as the season goes on to here's the separation of the protomolecule and actual Miller, and the real kind of connection he had with this guy that he didn't really care about all that much in the beginning. It was kind of a pain in his butt. So I love how they've kept the humanity in him. And I think they've done that by keeping his focus on the big picture and giving him that sense of responsibility for what everyone else is doing.
Now, I would say that Holden was, and this is actually, again, bringing out the B word, this has been different than the books, that Holden was a bit more focused on the protomolecule stuff and kind of just ignoring like all the shit. Like Amos was back in camp and he was watching Mercury like shoot some guy in the head and watching the other Belters like kidnap people, and Holden seemed to not care until the point where it started to interfere with his fear of the protomolecule. And that's why I think they played off the fact that he's still terrified of the protomolecule and obsessed with it. And once he realized, okay, it's going to fuck us up, we need to leave, and no one's going to leave, and they're all yelling at him because they're trying to kill each other, that's when he's like, all right, now I have to deal with this shit just as much as just to the point of trying to get everyone off the planet or trying to deal with the protomolecule, because Mercury and the others were interfering with his ability to deal with that.
Well, yeah, again, I think that's his responsibility that he's taking for again, this conflict is because he opened up the doors. He's got to watch over these people and make sure that they're safe, even if they're going to be arguing amongst themselves. It's almost a somewhat parental figure. I don't want to mess with the kids unless you make me. And when I do, then I'll slap everyone around and get them where they need to be. But yeah, I think that sort of parental role is almost where he's at.
So in the chat, Steve and I made that Miller Lite joke last year. So
it's still funny, Mark.
But anyway, if there's no more thoughts on Holden, I wanted to move on to Miller, which is sort of related to Holden. Because speaking of, we did live streams for season 3 last year, and I'm finally able to talk about something I was sort of holding in. And although I think a lot of people figured this out in season 3, but some people were wondering what's the deal with the protomolecule bullshit that's still in the Rosinante. And of course, they finally explained this season that that's how Miller communicates with Holden. And that's how he gets them. He's connected through the protomolecule that was still on the Rosinante. And so when I first saw that, and all the way back to episode 1 of season 3, I was like, Miller's going to show up, because I knew, and that's why I was freaking out over it, because I knew that that's how he was connected, and they waited. But I don't know if you consider that a spoiler, because I know some people who haven't read the books even figured that out last year. But I don't know if you guys notice that, or if that was a revelation to you.
Yeah, we had actually talked about it. I think one of the last streams I think I brought up, like, is anybody ever going to check underneath the ship while this thing is here? And is that what the connection? I think so I think that there was sort of a little bit of an idea, but yeah, I think your idea was like, hold on, don't get into it. So I didn't know it was going to be a whole season. I think at that point we had to wait for, but yeah.
I mean, well, I remembered seeing the protomolecule. Because, look, at the end of the season, he says he needs to hitch a ride, so, and then there's literally sitting on the bottom of the ship. I was wondering, at some point, are they actually going to go and check, and see, that's there. I didn't necessarily know that that's what it was beforehand, though, in terms of seeing the protomolecule being on the outside hull. But I figured, at the end of the season, once he said he needed to hitch a ride to get to where he was going, I was like, okay, well, that's going to be his vehicle is going to be attaching to the protomolecule that's already on the outside of the ship, or maybe he was projecting himself from there. But I hadn't made
that's how he projected himself into Holden. Yeah, it was through that piece of protomolecule.
Okay, I thought there might have been something else, because remember, they did talk about him getting radiated from being in what the hell was it?
Eros?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I thought that might have been part of it.
Oh no! It was from the books. It was clearly just the piece of protomolecule that was on the ship.
Okay, got it.
Well, and I like that the show actually has trusted its audience enough that they never had to mention it again. They showed it that one time. They made an intentional showing of this piece of proto-molecule underneath the decking, and then they did nothing for more than a season. Like a season and a half until
there was one thing I noticed that to me I thought it made it clear, but I think episode 8 of season 3, when Melba blew up the ship and all the other ships are going after the Rosnate, and Holden got into the cargo bay and he's like, Miller, come here, talk to me. They did this one shot that went external from the ship. It went right into the blue proto-molecule and then it went straight to Miller. So to me, that was them visually telling you that blue proto-molecule was actually.
Yeah, but you already knew that was.
Exactly.
To be perfectly honest, I had completely forgotten all about that piece of proto-molecule, and I forget things. I had forgotten all about that.
But again, it wasn't like this season. Again, they were hitting it again. They've nailing it on the head like some shows would do. They just went, we've done it. Part of the audience, they'll make the connection. And I like that the show trusts its audience enough to do that.
Yeah, and I think the reason why they had to wait to reveal it is because once Holden knows, then he knows how to get rid of Miller. So they can't reveal it until they're ready to get rid of Miller.
I mean, but did Holden really want to get rid of Miller? Because it didn't seem like he wanted to get rid of him. It was just more so, like, at least the way I interpreted it is like, look, if you're gonna be here, at least give me something I can use. Don't pop up with all the cryptic shit and then just say, well, it's too complex for your dumb human mind to handle because I am proto-molecule God now. Which that was definitely what was happening with him last season, especially when what was the analogy he made where he basically said Holden was like an ant and he was
a monkey with this trying to operate a microwave or something like that.
It was something like that, and and Miller not Miller, but Holden just had to kind of be like, okay, I guess I got to roll with it then, So I don't think that he really unless maybe it's a book thing. But in the show, you didn't necessarily get the sense that he wanted Miller gone. He just wanted, like, hey, if you're going to show up, tell me the shit that I need to know and make it in a format where I can actually understand.
Well, I kind of got the sense that, so maybe not all the time, but at some stages, even in the show itself, I got the sense that Holden was wanting Miller gone. Because he even talked about, he was like, oh, I'm sick, I would settle for your voice not being in my head anymore. And Miller's just like, well, you only have one voice in your head. I have thousands, so but and then he was also like, he refused to talk to Miller for half the season. That surprised me because that didn't happen in the book. So it seems like at that stage he wanted Miller gone. But he's probably glad that he wasn't. But anyway, another thing I want to talk about was interesting change from the books is with the whole thing, and I want to get your guys' opinions on it because you haven't read the books, because I'm a bit so late on this. But Miller, how towards the end of the season, there's a fight between the real Miller and like the proto-molecules version of the Investigator, and that's something the show made up, and to me it seemed kind of jarring, like they just introduced that all of a sudden at the end of the season. It wasn't all that necessary, all that smooth, but that's my snooty book reader coming out. Akton, what are your thoughts on that?
So now explain that again.
So towards the end of the season, when Miller is sort of fighting with the proto-molecule over the image, like they said, if the Miller without a hat appears, that's the real Miller, but if with the hat, then that's the Investigator, that's the proto-molecule. And he kept trying, and the proto-molecule kept like fighting his program, trying to stop him from what he was doing.
Yeah. So what's your question? I'm sorry.
Question, what did you think of that? Did you think it worked? Did it seem jarring, out of place?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't honestly, like, I wasn't clear on who was who. Like, so that was the real Miller? Like, I didn't get that.
Yeah, they were saying that was the real Miller. Like they took his
so I guess that there were two opposing forces.
Yeah.
but I didn't pick up until just now that you mentioned it that was the actual real Miller. I didn't think the actual real Miller had anything to do with it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. See, it was pretty clear to me. I mean, it wasn't jarring or anything like that because I didn't know anything other than what the show presented to me. I think it was definitely an interesting presentation. It was shocking, but they made it intentionally shocking with the big noise and scream and the differential, and it knocked a Holden back, and yes, but it to me it kind of clicked because we do know the protomolecule holds on to all the memories, all of the personalities are floating around in there. Even the investigator had sort of mentioned that it's being torn apart and pieced back together each time, and that there was something layered effect of the real Miller and sort of the protomolecule using this. We just thought that it was pro-human. It was the Miller side was being pro-human and helping things out, where it ends up being that it was just the protomolecule using that form. So it worked for me because I didn't know anything other than that. And I think it gave an interesting insight into, wow, what would it be like to be trapped and killed and recreated inside of this protomolecule, and you have an element of your consciousness still there, but you're just being used. I don't know. I think it gave a even darker view of the protomolecule, and maybe that was the overall intention.
And in the chat, Belinda says, I didn't mind the glitching between Miller and the investigator. The authors have said it was kind of what they went for in the books, but it was really vague in them. I don't know. For me, the way I describe it is the books, it seemed like there was an internal struggle like one might have in their own head about, oh, do I want to go out tonight? And, oh, maybe part of you does, part of you doesn't. It's got kind of internal struggles when it came out in the books. In the show, it came off as an external struggle. Well, let's make a Mr. Robot kind of like the conflict between Mr. Robot and Elliot. Even though they're both inside the same head, it was like an external struggle where there's two different personalities vying for control over the same body. And I actually think the books version worked better, but I don't know. Any more thoughts on that?
I mean, well, let's see. For me, with regards to Miller versus the investigator, I mean, maybe I have to go back to season 3, but I didn't really get a vibe that it was supposed to be two separate things.
It wasn't at first. It definitely wasn't.
Okay. Yeah, so when
that's what I was saying. It seemed like they just introduced that in episode 9, and it felt jarring to me.
Yeah. So when that popped up, it was kind of one of those things where it's like, this is a little weird because now how, has he just been the investigator the entire time, or, were there portions of him that was Miller with the hat on, or, is the only way that the investigator can...
That's what I was wondering. I mean, the only clear part is like in that first episode where he's on Earth and he's like, oh, I wonder what rain tastes like. And that's obviously being Miller. But then all of a sudden he's like, sits up, we need to talk about that ride, kid. And it's going back to an investigative personality.
Right. So that was the, one of the things where it was like, this is a little different. It makes sense. But yeah, I really wish they would have introduced that maybe like an episode or two earlier, just so you could kind of get used to it, because it's like now it's Miller sounding like regular Miller again, and not the whole what was his whole thing he kept on saying throughout season 2,
doors and corners.
And corners. I was like, fucking doors and corners. And if I gotta hear that phrase one more time out of him, yeah, so it wasn't that, but it was like, all right, well, so we're gonna get regular Miller now? How long is this gonna last? And that didn't last long. So Mark, I definitely get your point about it being a little jarring, because I think they probably should have introduced that earlier in the season, just to kind of get us acclimated to that. So when it's like just full Miller and then maybe he glitches every now and then, you have a sense of, okay, well, he fought him off, and now the protomolecule is fighting back. So before that, like when he first popped up and was like, "Hey, really quick, kid, here's what's happening to me," and blah blah blah. And we see that's how it's the investigator. Hey, kid, we got to talk about that, right? No, hey, he's fighting me again. It was like, yeah. So it was like, all right. And honestly speaking, since I hadn't looked at the episode count, I didn't realize we were that late into the season.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I was like, oh, like when they got to the last episode, I was like, wait, that's it? No more Miller? Holy shit. Okay then.
All right. Well, then unless there's anything else to say about this, we can go ahead and move on. Let's talk about Naomi. You sort of hinted at her earlier about how they actually had her on the planet. And because in the books, we don't know how she would acclimate to a planet. She never actually went. Like, she went down the well to drop Holden off, but that's it. But I think it really opened up her character. Particularly, it was nice getting moments with her and Holden, like sort of the romance. I think the book show does a much better job of portraying that, and how she was like hiding. Although I thought it's kind of a cliche the way characters always hide their sickness from their loved ones. I'm like, oh, you just tell them already. But I think it did add, especially her confrontation with Murtry, because we got no interaction between those two in the books, and how she was like, actually helped Lucia to escape and all that, and had like the Rosinante fire missiles at them. Like, that was fucking awesome. So yeah. So what are your guys? Any thoughts on Naomi?
I mean, outside that Naomi is awesome. I mean, we can all just keep saying that. No, it was. And again, it was kind of nice to have that, especially because this was sort of a Belter planet, to get Naomi down there and be part of that. It keeps her engaged with everything. Again, I don't have a book, predisposition to sort of compare everything to. But I think they've done an amazing well of keeping the characters' growth in interesting directions, keeping all of them important. So yeah, I think it was absolutely necessary to bring Naomi down to the planet. And again, that obviously first step out and exploration into the world, was a beautiful shot, and really just indicative of what this show does so well. And yeah, I think having her there and having that kind of sympathetic Belter connection with what's going down in Illis, it gives us those eyes. I mean, in some ways, she is the only one that's not from a planet that's on the Rocinante, because Amos and Holden are both from Earth, and Alex is from Mars. So she's the only one that's not, born on a planet. So it's good to have her involved in this, and she's not just sort of stuck on the Rocinante, on the ship, and kind of doing everything from there. So I think they did a great job with her. They made her really sympathetic, took her sympathy for the Belters, and I think really used that to bring the audience in and give us that different point of view. And then bringing her back, then you get her back up in the Rossi, and then she's able to really put her, she had her personal skills on the planet, and then she was able to use her technical skills and smarts back up to move everything forward. So yeah, I love what they did with Naomi this season, and I really liked the kind of development of her and Holden's relationship, as well as getting her to explore larger parts of the world. Yeah,
and I really like that choice to put Naomi down on the planet. And I was a little surprised to hear you say in your review, Mark, that didn't happen in the books, because I can't imagine the story without her down there. I think that added so much to the story and to her character. It allowed her to also start her connection with Lucia a little sooner, because they're both down on the planet together. I thought that it all worked really well. Now, as far as the cliche, hiding it from her lover thing, yeah, but I mean, she was right. Like, Holden definitely would have been overprotective of her, and she didn't want that. So it was cliche, but it made sense as to why she would do that. And yeah, I mean, I've kind of already talked about her connection with Lucia, and I liked how she was, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about her later too, but I liked how Naomi was kind of the mentor figure in that. She's like, yeah, what you're going through, I went through that. But then at the same time, Naomi is not through it because you see her make the call to Fred Johnson at the end. But I don't know if we're in the second half of the season now, but she makes the call to Fred Johnson at the end and about her son, and then we see that her son is working for her ex-husband or ex-lover, whatever he is, who is now the terrorist in the Belter. So Naomi's going to have some shit to deal with in the next season, it looks like, when she finds out what her son is up to. So she's not all the way through her crap, but she's been through what Lucia has been through, and I loved that whole dynamic between those two.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, because you say you like how they sort of help establish the bond between Naomi and Lucia, but that didn't exist in the books because it wasn't Lucia. It was her husband named Basia, and Naomi never bonded with him. It was Alex. So, yeah, I think it works better for what the show established to have her down there to begin with, too. And I like what they did with Lucia as well. But real quick, I want to backtrack because I forgot to talk about something, and everyone's in the chat was talking about it earlier. Someone mentioned how they liked how Miller, getting back to him, how he turned into Optimus Prime, which that was quite funny. And then Belinda says my biggest disappointment was we didn't get the Dino Miller bot. I mean, it's different than what it was described in the book, sure, but we did get a Miller bot. I mean, it wasn't quite as grand, but this is where I think the budget started to run out, particularly this ending sequence with the proto-molecule thing. But I still loved it. I loved the Miller bot. I thought it was awesome just visually seeing this little weird thing and hearing Miller's voices out of it. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that one.
Well, that was also cool because it allowed the doctor that now had been suspecting all of Miller now to actually engage with Miller and like, oh my God, this thing that he's been talking about, it is actually real. You know, I thought that was kind of cool and allowed her to sort of start to bridge that connection over to the larger proto-molecule world and stuff like that. So, I mean, that was kind of a cool bit. Plus, yeah, Miller's doing something and he's part machine. It's sci-fi. That's like bread and butter right there. So yes, give us more of it.
Yeah. Did the Miller bot work for you, Acton?
Yeah, I actually really liked the Miller bot. I didn't know that it was called that when I was watching that. I thought it was, I liked how it was a little like clunky and I don't know, like it was like all these pieces put together. It was really, But I liked it. I liked it that it was like that, and yeah, I thought it was cool. I liked that.
Don,
the Miller bot was definitely interesting. The only thing that kind of got me about that whole sequence was, I guess, the planetary defenses or whatever that was, the thing that attacked him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
yeah, that was the only thing that kind of got me because I was like, all right, I'm not sure exactly. Like, was that supposed to be the proto-molecule, or was that...
Yeah, the proto-molecule creators had their machines were trying to stop Miller from going into that thing.
Because that thing was created by the people who killed the people who created the proto-molecule.
Yeah, proto-molecule creators,
okay, yeah, sorry, I need one of those little boards with the strings and all that.
I think that's your confusion is probably a result of it was clear in the books now because their books are written out, but I think it's budget. This is where I was saying like they weren't able to show everything and make it completely clear what was going on. I think.
Okay.
But I still thought it would work for what they had. Like I still liked it overall.
No, I didn't think it was bad. I wasn't exactly sure if it was the proto-molecule that did that, or if it was the people who killed the people who created the proto-molecule. That was the only confusion I had.
Yeah, it was just that little they called the Eye of God or something. The bullet. Just that thing was whatever killed the proto-molecule.
I think it was the Eye of Sauron.
Anyway, sorry, Don, I cut you off before Naomi. Did you have anything to add to your thoughts on Naomi?
You know what? As far as Naomi is concerned, I like what they did with her story. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see, like, how she's gonna feel about things because she sent who was it that she sent to go tell her son like, hey, I'm out here and please don't go with your father. um ah,
Sorry, what are you referring to?
Naomi, damn, she did say to someone, hey, can you like get a message to my son basically to let him know like uh that I'm out here and basically because she said I got to get to him before his father does.
Yeah, no. She doesn't have any contact with him though. She has no idea where he is. She's trying to find. I think you're referring to the end of the season, right? She's trying to find the boy's father because that's her only link to find him.
Well,
she
no,
has
but
no idea
remember
where she is.
man, no, but she was saying that there was somebody that she had that could like get a message to him or something like that before the father did, not knowing that the father already had him.
Oh, I'm not sure. I'd have to rewatch the season. I don't remember.
Yeah, I just remember at the end it was that message to
Fred
Freddie
Johnson.
saying that to Fred Johnson that you owed me a favor. At one point you were going to give me what I wanted, and this is that day, and this is what you're going to do. So
Right. So maybe that's what I'm thinking.
yeah, that's the only thing that I remember is when she just called out to Fred Johnson
Yeah,
saying,
I thought she was just trying to find out where her son was because she had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, at the end of the day, she didn't know that the son was with the father. That part she didn't know.
Yeah, she didn't know that. Yeah, the father is like the head of the whatever you call it, terrorist organization or whatever, separatist. I don't know what the term for them are. He's the head of those guys, and his son seems to be like his number one, like his. And she has no idea about any of that. So that's what I was kind of talking about. Is like she's going to be in for a rude awakening in season 5.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Drummer knew a little bit more, and she was the one that recognized, hey, you're Naomi, Naomi's looking for a kid, and you kind of made that connection. But it wasn't Naomi knowing any of that, and they haven't talked.
I don't think the Drummer knew that Naomi's kid was like working with Marco. Like we didn't, the audience didn't know till the very end.
No, she didn't know he was
I don't
working
think Drummer
with
knew that either.
Right.
Just that Naomi was, I think, looking for her son or something like that.
All
She
right,
made
cool.
some comment.
Well, let's move along because we'll get to the drama stuff later. I want to first stick in with Illis when I get to Amos. I think everyone loved Amos this season. This is one thing that totally satisfied them from the books. I think it even elevated in certain cases. Like I remember when I saw the trailers for the season and I saw Amos punching this guy. I was like, yes! I can't wait to see this. I think this is like the best use of Amos. This was really one of his element. And kind of like I was saying earlier, I liked how like Holden was all, who put him all kill, but Amos was like, in there, and he could tell the shit was going on. I liked, and this is again very true to the books. The way he goes up to Mercury is like, I know who you are. You're a killer, and you can say it's about this contract and all this other bullshit, but you just take enjoyment out of killing people. And he was so great, and his relationship with Way. Again, that's something the books didn't do, which I thought was amazing. Was it? Does that mean we're not fucking anymore? That was probably one of the best lines of the show. But anyway, Don, what are some of your thoughts on Amos?
Favorite character of the season. Definitely. Listen, Amos was one of those guys when I first saw him, I was like, I'm not sure how to take this guy. And he grew on me, and definitely this season, my favorite character, hands down, because he takes no shit from anybody. Even when he went through his dark period where, when he couldn't see and he basically was on a suicide mission and Holden brought him back, once he got back in it, he was back in it, top to bottom. And look, the fact that he is loyal to James and basically his entire crew, and he's like, yes, he is the weird guy who doesn't experience emotion the same way everyone else does. I'm not sure if he's supposed to be autistic or something, but it is what it is. He's a weird guy that, hey, if he needs to, even if you guys have been fucking, he will shoot you dead, because that's just what needs to be done. And yeah, like I said, it took him a couple of seasons to grow on me, but I definitely loved him this season for the fact that he was just like, I'm not taking shit from anybody. If it doesn't come from the captain, it means absolutely nothing to me. So yeah, you guys thoughts, but yeah, that was my guy.
Yeah, I really liked Amos this season as well. And I'm like Don, I didn't love him in the beginning. It took a season or two for him to grow on me. But now I absolutely love the fact that our heroes have like a bad guy on their side. Like he's basically the way that he talked to Mercury, like, I know what you are. You're a killer because I know, because I am too. Like I love how the good guys like have basically a killer on their side, but who is just loyal to Holden to the last, like to his last breath. He is loyal to Holden. He wasn't always that way, if I recall. But I love how they have this kind of bad guy-ish guy, a killer basically, who is on the side of the good guys and who's loyal to Holden to the end. And my other favorite scene with him was at the very end when he challenged Mercury to fight, and Mercury punched him, and he like gives him that look with the bloody teeth, and it's like, thank you. And like, I kind of wanted to see him beat Mercury up a little bit more, but that's okay. Then we cut away from that. But absolutely love Amos in this season. I mean, he fulfills his function in the show just as Holden. He would never be Holden. He would never be the leader, the guy who takes control. But he fulfills his function, and he fulfills it well. So I really enjoyed this character.
How about right now? I'm free right now. God, yes. I mean, he has some of the best lines too, and I think that's the appeal of Amos, is his directness. To me, I mean, that's the great thing about the character, is you would always know where you stood with Amos, whether he liked you or didn't like you. You always knew where you stood, and he doesn't lie, he doesn't BS, he doesn't beat around the bush. He's very direct, and there's just something so incredibly refreshing about that from a character. And he's really grown over the past 2 seasons. The past few seasons, he was very locked down and very much just sort of a machine. You point him a direction to do things. And, over the past couple of years, he's connected with Holden and the rest of the crew of the Rossi. It wasn't just Naomi, it was everyone else. Even kind of stepped away from Naomi for sort of a brief period of time. He got a best friend that he really cared about. And I think that whole relationship kind of connected him. It started to open him up, and that's what we've seen. We've seen Amos open up over the past few years. Every season, there has been sort of a new thing happening with him. His world is expanding, and he is adjusting to all of that. And I think this is really, we're starting to get Amos almost stepping out of the psychological PTSD that his upbringing has sort of raised him in. There's a great interview with Wes Chatham, actually with what's his name from Mythbusters, who's a big fan of the show, Adam Savage, where Chatham is talking about how he got into Amos, and how he's read the books and he thought about what would happen with his character. How would he act? What would he do? I mean, he went and talked to like psychologists and asked, hey, people that have been through this, how would it affect their behavior? And I think I think that's why Amos is such a strong character for most people, is not only is it just the character itself is interesting. I think Wes Chatham plays him very realistically. I think he puts a lot of effort into it. And we're starting to see the protective shell that Amos put himself in start to crack and open up and change. And this season, again, even his connection with Wei is, he did have to kill her, at the end, but it was her choice. It's still a relationship opening up part of him, So I think, where we go next from him is going to be.
So I did want to talk a bit about that because I had mixed feelings about him killing Wei. I mean, that was true to the books, but in the books they didn't have such a relationship. So it's kind of like, couldn't he just shot her in the leg or something? Like, I get that he needed to protect Holden, needed Holden to do what he needed to do, and she was standing in his way. But in some ways, that's why I say I'm conflicted. Because some ways it's a good character beat for him because in the end, he chooses his friend, he chooses what's right, and it was a bit tragic. But I don't know if I totally agree with him, like beating the crap out of Mercury, saying it's your fault, you made me kill Wade. It seems like he's not taking any personal responsibility for that. He's the one that pulled the trigger. I don't know. Like I said, mixed feelings. I don't know, Akton, how you feel about it.
I don't know. I mean, I can see your point that he should take a little more responsibility, but it's not all Mercury's fault. That he could have chosen not to pull the trigger, or he could have chosen to shoot her in the leg, or something like that. But I thought it was very tragic in the sense that it really goes to show how much of even though he is a hero and he is a lovable guy and sometimes and you can really feel for him, it goes to show what a cold-blooded killer he really is. When something needs to be done, he will shoot this girl that he's been having sex with. I mean, I wouldn't say that they were in a relationship, but they definitely had a bond and a connection beyond just physical. They had something there, and he just shot her without a second thought. And I thought that was just tragic because it really drives home the point that this is who Amos really is. As likable and lovable as he seems sometimes, and some of his funny lines and all that stuff, that he, when it comes down to it, is this cold-blooded killer, which is what he was telling Mercury in the beginning, that I know you because I'm like you. So I don't know. I can definitely see your point of view there, Mark, but I didn't have a big problem with it. I just thought it was kind of tragic for that character because it reminds the audience that, oh yeah, he's a cold-blooded killer.
Darrin, Don, you guys have any thoughts on this?
Well, yeah. I mean, listen. At the end of the day, Amos is a professional killer, not a professional leg shooter. So, I mean,
already got me there, Tom.
I mean, what were you expecting for him to do? I mean, look, he's in a situation where, for him, he already knows it's life or death. And, I mean, she basically told him, hey, remember, she has threatened to shoot him multiple times before this. And at this point, I think he was just kind of like, look, you keep on threatening to shoot me. I don't threaten to shoot. I shoot. So, I mean, look, yeah, I feel bad that had to happen. But at the same point, she should have known he was off to begin with. And it's just one of those things where you can't point a gun at somebody and then expect them to only wound you in reply. I'm sorry. I just it is what it is. I feel sorry that she had to be put in that situation, and I understand what you guys are saying about he should take responsibility for pulling the trigger, but he's used to life or death situations. So you don't point a gun at a man and then say, okay, hey, can you please, if you're going to shoot at me while I have this gun pointed at you, just please don't aim for anything vital.
Well, yeah, but she did shoot at him several times as she went down. So, I mean, I think the thing is once they're both killers, they're both soldiers, and he had given her every chance to walk away. And she was like, look, I owe Mercury. I owe this guy. He pulled myself out. I'm not going to go with him. That was it. But once it comes down, they're still shooting in the leg. These are soldiers. If you shoot in the leg, they'll shoot you in the head.
Yeah, I mean, I guess where I'd backtrack where I think Amos is justified in being upset with Mercury is because Mercury basically used her as bait. Like, he wanted her to die because he wanted Amos to be distracted by her, and while he shot Amos in the back while he was Yeah, I can see that definitely. But Colonel Doomsday in the chat says, yes, Don, I would have been disappointed had Amos not killed his girlfriend. I think that's maybe a bit too dark, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, let's move on. And I think for the for the process of time, I might just skip over Alex unless you guys. I mean, Alex is great this season, but I don't have anything particular.
Honestly speaking, he really didn't do much, and that's no slight against the actor. They didn't write much for him to do.
He was a good supporting character. I mean, he did stuff, but he was kind of a supporting character. He supported Naomi. He supported Holden. I mean, he didn't have a whole storyline on his own.
He stood there and went, holy shit. Basically, I mean,
Alex is a great character, but let's just give it down to Cass Anvar, who has been a massive
great
for this show.
Yes, absolutely.
And really, I mean, I love Cass more than I love Alex, and usually I love the characters more than I care about the actors. But for me, it's like Alex is just a persona for Cass Anvar. So,
and the one thing I will say, and I guess we could roll this into talking about Lucia, because he had quite an interesting sort of dynamic with Lucia. Because at first he was hitting on her, and then he saw that she was married. He was like, "Oh, no, thank you." But then he was able to kind of relate to her once they were on the Rosinante because of his deal with his ex and how he fucked things up and kind of warning her not to do the same thing. And of course, you had Naomi also had that very strong bond with them. And then, so I want to talk about the storyline in Orbit. And the main thing I have to say, and I've said this in my reviews, which I haven't released it yet, so no one's heard me talk about this yet. But the Baba Bacola, the Belter ship that has the lithium that's falling out of orbit, is that little girl in charge? Because it seems like every time they're talking to the ship and trying to do repairs, they're talking to a little girl. She's like, "Oh yeah, I'll get right on it." And they have that pilot guy staying in the background going like, while the little girl's basically
in charge. I think it's just because it's a main character or connected to one of our main characters, so she's in charge. But yeah, it did kind of seem that way. Didn't it?
She's a smart one. She wants to go to university, so they're all listening to her. I mean, I'm assuming the rest of the crew does something, but
And there's another thing I'm uncertain about, because in the books it was Elvie that Felsia, the young girl, she had a connection with Elvie, and Elvie was the one telling her to go to university. But in the show, it was Naomi. And I understand the change because they want to focus more on Naomi and they got to condense storylines a bit. But I still kind of prefer it being Elvie. I think it gave Elvie more to do, but I don't know. And plus, having a Belter connect with an Earther. Here's a Belter connected with another Belter, which to me isn't as big of a deal, but I guess you guys don't care. it's just a snooty book reader thing. But
it worked for us. It worked for the episode storyline. But they do a good job of that, of mixing things up and keeping it moving and going forward and involving everyone. It's a great balance.
Absolutely. So, what did you guys think of that whole storyline with the thing, the ship falling out of orbit, and Alex and Naomi struggling to fix it, and that shuttle's going to send over a bomb to try to stop them and blow up the Rosinante? Because in the books, this was a much more involved, bigger storyline. Like the people in Edward Israel kidnapped Naomi, and she was being held captive for a while. And one of the people defected to the Rosinante crew, and they were shooting at each other in space. But this one was really condensed for the show, where it was just the thing, which I actually like the fact that it condensed it. I think it works, but not having read the books, knowing nothing about the books, did the storyline work for you?
Well, I'll start. This is a benefit of not having read the books, because I had no idea what it's supposed to be. I have no idea what is supposed to happen here. I thought it was really intense. I thought the whole thing that all three of them are kind of stuck in space, and you've got this thing hanging over them was, oh great, if we get all the people off the planet, like where are they going to get to? They're going to get to these ships that are stuck. So and then when you add in the Edward Israel firing on the Rocinante, I thought that just raised the stakes so much higher. I thought the whole thing was really intense. I thought it was great. I had no idea there's supposed to be all these other things that are supposed to happen. I didn't know what I'm missing, I guess, but I thought it was great.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it held its tension. There was part of me that was kind of like, oh, what? We're just going to change the rules of physics out here in order to create some tension? I mean, initially there was a little bit of like, why is this happening? But it did give the effect of building up what the effects of the proto-molecule was. It did tie in so much more of what was happening on the planet being the time pressure for everything to get done. And I think whenever you have sort of a time pressure to motivate characters and motivate actions, I think it really sort of shifts and changes things and adds a nice, level to it. And also, again, it made the threat, both planetary and space side, the same. When before it was kind of easier for, well, the Belters are arguing with RCA at the bottom, but the people up top, they're just trying to do some scientific observations or, get ready to leave for around it. It made those separate stories, I think, all kind of come together. And I think that worked really well. Just sort of ratcheting the tension and keeping everybody, there is that larger threat. Yeah, Belter, RCA, colonist, whatever. Proto-molecule will kill you all. Let's focus on that. So I think that worked really well with it.
Edward Israel, we're gonna have us a talk.
Yeah, that was a great line.
Oh man, like what the hell? Like why does everyone want to blow up the goddamn and again, this kind of goes back to the whole no one wants to listen to the guy who's been through it all thing. So it's like, oh, James Holden on the planet is a problem. But you know what also is a problem? His ship. Blow it up. Like, they haven't done anything. But James Holden is the captain, so they gotta die too. So yeah, so that whole thing where they're trying to keep all the ships in orbit and not really realizing at first that it was because the proto-molecule had created some defenses that basically shut down all of their drives. Oh my god. Yeah, that was a harrowing situation, and the fact that they were able to kind of think their way through it was amazing. And so yeah, I loved all the space stuff, and yeah, people just need to stop trying to fire missiles or whatever the hell else at the Rossi and the crew, because they're actually trying to save you fucking people.
All right, so I gotta mention in the chat, Dan Palmer said that let's see, the girl did have a perfect Belter voice. If J.J. Abrams directed that episode, she would have had the Force and got the ship out of orbit using the Force. And she would have been Aaron Wright's granddaughter as well. But anyway,
Lots of Skywalker fans in the audience tonight. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just making an observation.
Anyway, so let's kind of roll in to talk about, because I want to move on. But let's roll in real quick to talk about Murtry and LV. We talked about Murtry a bit before. I think he was the perfect villain, played by a perfect actor, because I think you do relate to him a bit and why he's just out to protect his own people. And 23 people died in the shuttle and stuff like that. And you kind of get the sense of his side. And I think, I don't know, I think the books went a little bit off the rails. When I first read the books, I thought he was a mustache twirly villain a little bit towards the end. And I think maybe they downplayed that in the show, because at the end he actively wanted to stop Holden from saving people's lives. Like, he didn't want Holden to save people's lives so RCE could come in and get the protomolecule technology. And I don't think they did the same thing in the show. I don't know if you guys got that same impression.
I didn't get any.
No, that's not what I got.
Yeah, I didn't get any mustache twirling and
stuff. Yeah.
I didn't. Well, I didn't get the impression that he was actively trying to stop James Holden from saving lives.
Well, just at the end, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like at the end, I didn't get the impression that he was actively like, no, James Holden wants to save people. No, anyone who wants to save people is evil. No. Didn't get that. I just I thought that he was at that point it was just like, look, I got a mission that I am trying to accomplish here, and James Holden is going to fuck up my money, and I will let no one fuck up my money. So I mean that's what I got out of it.
Dan Palm said, I got the impression that Mercury wanted to stop Holden from saving Belter's lives. And yeah, that's definitely true throughout the season. But what I'm referring to specifically is he wanted the ships to fall out of orbit. He wanted everyone there to die because so that way RCE could come in and claim the technology, because by turning the protomolecule technology off, then RCE couldn't get possession of it.
Sure. I mean, Mercury is, I think, an excellent developmental villain because you do start to feel sympathetic for him initially because, yeah, he's leading these people and they get all killed and, he's got to believe that the Belters are responsible for it. And, sure, maybe a little prejudiced, but ultimately you can see that he is seemingly coming from an understandable place. And I think that's where that encounter with that Amos sees is so important. It's because in that moment you see it's like, no, you are a killer. You appreciate the excuse that your people being killed has given you in order to kill more people. But that's not why he was reacting the way from he was. He would go in that direction anyway. And especially since then they add on later on with his discussion with Wei is that, he gets money if he gets through this. He's got a percentage this time. That's a vested personal interest. Ultimately, this guy is that whether or not that bomb had gone off and those 23 people had gotten killed, Mercury would have gone in this direction anyway. But the fact that they do give us a reason to be understandable and then slowly reveal this bit of character, I think that it was done great, even to the point when they get into when they're in the big structure and suddenly he's backing Holden up. Yeah, we got to take this, and he puts his own people aside. It's like, oh my God, has he evolved? Has he snapped out of it? And you realize it's like, oh no, this is just his more games. He just understands that he's got to watch. They've got to work together for a little while, but eventually, he'll turn things around and he'll get back. So it's just. They really did a great way of keeping Mercury constantly interesting and making him at some point sympathetic and at a point where you realize he's just a killer and ultimately, well, it's going to end up bloody, which it does.
Yeah, just like I was saying, he was like, don't fuck up my money.
Absolutely. All right, so let's talk about Elvie, because I'm curious to see what you guys thought about it, and I'm actually really interested. I know from Epkin's review that you thought she came off really strong, because I was wondering about that, because she's definitely, her role was downplayed from the books because she was in the books a hell of a lot more, but she also had a crush on Holden and was like always like leading up to him, and it created the like weird love triangle thingy. And in the show, she's outright antagonistic towards him. She's like, why the fuck are you telling us what's going on? You're withholding information. What's going on? And I thought that was an interesting choice. I'm not sure if I could say which one I like, but I do like that they got rid of the whole love triangle thing, because I thought they were going to make that even worse with Naomi being on the planet. I'm glad they just cut that whole crush thing out entirely. I think that was a smart way. But I don't know if she came off as strong of a character. Don, what were your thoughts on Elvie?
I actually thought she worked pretty well in this season. Yeah, look, in the beginning with the whole lightning storms and trying to figure out like, well, what the hell is going on here? And every time she shows up someplace where there's been an event, and it's like, Holden, what are you doing here? Oh, I just happened to be in the area where this disaster just took place. What a coinky dink. And when she finally figures out, like, oh no, there's something more here that you're not telling me on purpose, I mean, look, she doesn't lose her cool to the extent that she becomes a damn psychopath, which is good. Uh, but I think that her being able to work through some of the problems and being willing to assist everyone who needed help, as opposed to being like, okay, well, yeah, the belters are here, and since my company doesn't trust them, I'm not going to trust them either. It was like, she was a very level-headed character throughout the season, and because she stayed so level-headed, I think that's why she was able to kind of pick up on what Holden was doing, and then ultimately follow him to to assist with what happened with Miller. So yeah, I mean, you know, I think she was a good character for the season. I want to see if they bring her back and do more with her later. But Mark, you said that she was even more expansive in the books, and yeah, I mean, like I don't think the love triangle thing would have worked out. Holden and Naomi are rock solid at this point, so I think that having some rando on a planet that works for a very antagonistic entity wasn't going to be a thing that even possibly affected him and Naomi's relationship.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really, I didn't know there was supposed to be a love triangle, or there was in the book. I'm glad they didn't have it here. That would have felt very, I don't know, hammy. It would have felt very wrong. I think also because you have the relationship between Amos and Way, then you would have had a couple of relationship things trying to establish on the planet. It would have been a little too much. But she's great because she is the kind of the humanistic side of RCA instead of or RCE, sorry, instead of Mercury, which is Soul Killer, and then we have Way, who's basically just sort of backing him up. That you have a scientist that's interested just in the science, and I like that as sort of a bridge character. To me, she worked really well, and I love the fact that there was somebody calling out Holden. I'm like, wherever you go, bad things are happening. And everything was fine before you got here. And now everything's fallen to hell. I mean, we need a character kind of throw that back into Holden's face. And I think she served a good job in doing that without being antagonistic. So, yeah, I think they made a good choice of keeping her just sort of science focused, as opposed, and that being the bridge.
So, did you kind of see that too, Afkin, that she was a bit of a surrogate for the audience to be like to actually point out things like that?
Well, no, I didn't. Not quite like that, but I just thought from her point of view, she needed to, because, well, at that point she was still like, something else is going on here, and you're not telling. You're hiding something from us, and I think that's when she was like, suddenly when you get here, everything goes to hell. I want to know why. Like, why? What are you hiding from us? Don't give me any of this bullshit anymore. I loved how she did that. She cut right to it. I didn't necessarily see it as more as a surrogate of the audience as much as she is sticking up for what's right for the people there and for science and all of that stuff. And she knows that Holden is withholding information, and she is not going to beat around the bush. She goes right after him. Isn't it weird that as soon as you got here, things start falling apart? And you're definitely withholding something, and I want to know what it is, and I want to know what it is now. So that's how I thought. And I also, you mentioned her being a little antagonistic as compared to the books. I didn't see it as antagonistic, because when they're once Holden tells her everything and tells everybody everything, and they are on the same team and they're aligned, their goals are aligned, they're actually very much on the same page and very much a team. I didn't think she was at the end of the season, she's not antagonistic to him.
Well, no, not at the end of the season, just towards the beginning when he wasn't sharing the information. It's like, what are you not telling us? Like she was really getting on his case. But once she got it there.
Yeah, which I thought she needed to be. From her point of view, that's exactly what, and I loved how she didn't beat around the bush. She just like, you are hiding something from us and I want to know what it is right now. I love that about that character. She just cut straight through the bullshit and went straight after Holden. And I don't see how the love triangle would have worked on the show. So I am.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. I think that was such a smart.
Yeah.
But
very, very glad they did.
I mean, it wasn't necessarily a love triangle. It's just she had a crush on him, and he had to turn her down because he was still in love with Naomi. And then her and Fayez, who on the show was on the ship, but in the books he was on the planet with her. Then they ended up hooking up, but they didn't have time to do all that. So I think it's good.
It kind of implied that there was something between them,
yeah,
but there wasn't a straight up like romance. But
yeah. But anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the other storylines. Let's get back to the.
There's other storylines.
Yeah, that's what I liked about that season. So let's start with the Bataladas Pampa. Let's get into Ashford and Drummer. So I will say, Ashford, both these characters not in the books at all at this stage, and so and the storyline was not in the books at all, but it is setting up for what's to come in the next book, which I thought was interesting. I thought it was great. I thought it helps flesh it out more, introduces more, eases you into it, gets you more into the universe rather than just throwing it all at you in season 5, which I think was a very smart move. And also, I love what they did with Ashford. As I was saying, I was a bit from season 3. I was like, I hated what they did with Ashford because I liked how the villain in the book, and they got rid of him. They made him sing and made him with the whatever kind of accent he has. Was that Scottish, Irish? I don't know. Well, and so I wasn't that big on it, but I love how they used him this season. I think it was. I like the camaraderie between him and Drummer. I still think that he should be arrested for shooting Grigori in the head. Nobody cares about Grigori, but whatever. Other than that, I do like his storyline and Drummer's and that Drummer ended up fucking quitting and how she punched Fred Johnson. That was fucking awesome. And she quit, and Ashford went off on a hunt his own. And he had a beautiful death. I saw people in the chat earlier talking about that and the scene where he was flying through the ship, shooting his guns. I thought that was like an amazing. See, this is all stuff that wasn't in the book, so I thought that was a beautiful use of this character. Now, one thing I will mention, I mentioned in my review, is that in episode 8, when Drummer gave him the thing of alcohol, and he was like, "No, save it. We'll have it when we get back." I'm like, "You're not coming back." Whenever a character says that, it's like, you're dead. You're never going to have that drink together. Anyway, so what were some of your guys' impressions of the storyline? Atkin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, and again, it's good not knowing what happened in the books and then finding out from you after the fact. Not having any idea how it's going, that this wasn't in the books at all or any of that stuff. Actually, I did know that. I think I did know that the only thing that was in the books was the illness, but still, it was good just going in with a fresh mind. And I really enjoyed Ashford's story arc this season. And there was a point where when Marco was talking to him, it seemed like he was getting to him a little bit. Like at first he was like, no, I don't care, shut up. But then he started engaging with him and asking him questions, and so I was like, oh no, I think Marco's getting to him, but he totally didn't at all. He stuck to his principles. He strongly believed that this union with Earth and Mars was the best thing for humanity, and yeah, it's not perfect, but this is the best thing for all humankind moving forward. And he stuck with the convictions to the bitter end, and I thought he had a great death scene. It was just beautifully shot out. He's just kind of floating out into space. I Absolutely loved it. I really love this character.
So, did you recognize that song that he was singing as he died was the same song he sung in season 3 when him and Drummer were trapped in the cargo bay and they were singing the song together?
I didn't at first, no, but
Okay.
I think probably in your review or somewhere somebody pointed it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, it was. But no, at first I actually didn't recognize that.
Yeah, and as for like Ashford, like seeing like he was actually buying Marcos, I think that he was just pretending so he could get Marco talking, and he was recording him, so he was trying to get Marco. It's like, oh yeah, I'm with you. Let me hear more while he's recording it and sending it to Drummer, which I thought was great. I thought that was another great moment. But anyway, Darren.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that also showed that the great intelligence of Ashford. Even at the end, he's going to realize his body's going to be, you know, a message back to Drummer to let him know what's going on. I mean, that's the cool ending for a great character arc. And yeah, last season was interesting. Is he going to be the good guy? Is he going to be the bad guy? Is he the mature soldier that's realized, you know, that this is a better world, or is he falling back? Is he bitter? Does he still just want to be the captain? And I think at the end of last season, you know, there was a bit of a detente set between him and Drummer, but it was like, what was going to happen with that? And I like where they went with it. I like that they're working together. They've got that mutual respect, that she's leading the station and he's leading the you know, missions out to do the small things. He's got the ship, you know, I love the balance that they had with it. And yeah, ultimately, the fact that he does stick to his principles, that he does stick to his guns, that he does sacrifice himself, knowing that this is a better way to go. You know, not just everyone fighting, but a sort of union, Belters working with the inners is really where things need to go. And even that was an arc. The fact that he acknowledged, well, he voted against Drummer initially with Marcos. He does acknowledge later on, no, she made the right choice. These people were going to cave out, and this was going to cause stress here. And, you know, acknowledging the fact that maybe Drummer sees things clearer than he does and has that advantage, I think, over him.
But did she make the right choice? I mean, that's an interesting question. I'm not saying I fall one way, one or the other, but it's an interesting question because, I mean, sure, she prevented civil war, but we see that Marco's gaining a lot more strength, is a lot more powerful than maybe people see. So maybe she should have just risked the civil war and had him killed. Maybe she was underestimating him by not killing him.
Well, in hindsight, it looks like she probably didn't make the right choice because now look where he is now. And so if he had eliminated him right then and there, they would have nipped that thing in the bud and Civil War be damned. But at the time, I understand her reasoning. I understand why she would do that. And in retrospect, probably wasn't the best choice, but I don't fault her for her thinking at the time.
Yeah, I think at the time that was the right proper choice, you know, was the fact that, you know, you don't know that this guy's going to end up being crazy and you've got these other things. I think there was, again, more that she wasn't aware of that would have obviously tilted things one way or the other. But I still think what I saw with Ashford's connection with Drummer is seeing that, you know, Drummer does have that. Ashford is a great fighter, but I think he sees the Drummer sees even a larger picture than he does. Which I think was a nice thing after all of the events from 3 where he tried to take over and Drummer took back, is now realizing that, yeah, this is the right way to go. And the best thing that he can do is make sure that she knows what Marcos is up to, even if it costs him his life, you know.
Stress-free K in the chat says Drummer did the right thing. So there you go. I'm still not sure. I'm not saying she didn't, but I'm still... I don't know. Maybe it's like you said, Adkins, in retrospect. In retrospect, she didn't, but at the moment, the heat of the moment, maybe it was. But anyway, Don, what are some of your thoughts on this whole storyline?
Yeah, so, you know, Belters, another favorite group of mine. I mean, them with their wild, super broken English and all that. Yeah, this was interesting because they were kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place to a certain extent. You know, because, yeah, they're trying to have things open up, you know, in terms of being seen as on equal footing with Mars and Earth. So this whole situation with the Belters who have kind of claimed rights on this planet, but now they've got this guy who's causing these little terrorist events, and they're not even realizing that he's got a much bigger plan that he's trying to put in place. It's like they had the opportunity to stop him, but they're like, no, listen, we don't know who's causing any of this. And yeah, he might have done a couple of things, but he's a scrappy little nobody. It's not a big deal. And having the back and forth with Ashford, and why did my mind just go blank on her name? Oh God.
Talking about Drummer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the back and forth between Ashford and Drummer with them trying to figure out, like, okay, well, how do we maintain peace with with the Belters and get all of these alliances together, so this way when more opportunities do open up to get into some of these rings, that it's not just a thing of Mars and Earth saying, okay, look, yeah, you guys just really aren't ready for all of this yet. More blockades on you.
Yeah, I love it. I was gonna say, I love the way the UN came in and were measuring their desk and was trying to intimidate them like that.
So that was interesting. And then Fred Johnson, we haven't seen him in a while. I mean, he very brief in this season. What, he was in 2 episodes, maybe?
One. He was in one episode.
He basically just got punched by Drummer.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, he was I quit. But definitely love the final stand of Ashford. Oh man, that was heartbreaking to a certain extent too, though, because it was you've gotten used to this guy. He definitely made a good showing of things, and now it's like, oh man, now we have.
All right, so I caught something on the second time I watched this. I wonder if you guys watched it, because I didn't catch it the first time. But when Ashford died, his wrist was actually recording.
Yes,
and he sent the message out.
I caught that.
It was recording what Marco was telling him. I didn't catch that. I thought that was a great way that even in the airlock when he was about to die, he was still tricking Marco, trying to get information out of him.
Oh, yeah. So did he once he recorded it, was he able to send that off? Then?
Yeah, the show as he was dying that it says transmitting, and they had a shot of his wrist. Yeah.
Now the question is, to whom was he transmitting that, and then how much of it did he actually get? Because I don't know if he got any of the plans beforehand as to what they were doing in terms.
Well, he just got what Marco said in the airlock. So Marco was very vague about what he was doing, very ominous, but he was kind of hinting at it.
But remember, before that, he already told Ashford, "Oh yeah, no, I'm covering up these asteroids in the Martian tech, so this way it'll slip right through Earth's defenses." That's the one thing that I think when they hear the message, that's not going to be in the message. And we're sitting there like, okay, so we got this guy Marco running around, talking some crazy shit. But what is he going to do? He's just a stinking belter. So, it was one of those things where, it's one of those things where they're like, damn it, man! If only you would have turned that thing on 2 or 3 minutes earlier. Imagine, what you might have been able to prevent. And then obviously, the big reveal at the end that Naomi's son is working with Marco, and because that was one of the not necessarily MacGuffins, but it was definitely a thing of, okay, Marco is out here running around, and you find out there's levels to his story. It's like, all right, he almost seems like a pickpocket at first, and then you find out he's this big terrorist commander in chief, and then when you get the reveal that the son is not only with him, in terms of just being there, but he's definitely taking part in this. It's like, no, he's going to be so devastated, Renee.
Yeah, that was definitely cool.
Yes.
All right. Okay, so I want to move on. I just want to mention in the chat, Belinda said that at 33.21 seconds in episode 406, I get a shout out. My last name is on the wall. Shuttle map. I have a restaurant on Mars named after me. Writers and production office use some fan names. I thank you for Save Expanse. Like, oh yeah, I thank you for those who save the Expanse. That's amazing. And I've heard of stuff like that. I've noticed myself that in Mars in the background there was a thing that said a restaurant called Screaming Firehawks, and which is the name they give to Expanse fans. Like that's their name. Instead of Trackers Trekkies, it's Screaming Firehawks. So there was a couple of like restaurants named after that showed up several times. So that's cool. I think they definitely went crazy with the production design, which I thought was great. So let's roll this in and talk about Bobby Draper and about her storyline. Well, all I have to say is you're fucked now. You really fucked up. You're totally fucked now. I don't know how I feel about this. I didn't hate it. I like its inclusion, and I don't know, but Bobby Draper, even in the short story, this storyline's based off of, she never like joined a crime syndicate. I don't know how I feel about, like, the whole time I was thinking, she's like, I have nowhere to go. I'm like, where's the Nate crew? Yes, you do. They showed you on the ship at the end of season 3. You have there to go. But I know a lot of people were pushing back against this, saying, well, no, she loves Mars and she's going to go back to Mars. And yeah, and I get that. But once she was there and found how fucked the situation is, she does have a place to go. But anyway, I don't know if I buy her joining a crime syndicate, but it was an interesting storyline. I won't give you that. And I did love the ending, especially when that crane fell and like she ended up saving Lily's life. But throughout most of the season, I couldn't stand Lily. You're fucked now. Like, just shut up. She's not fucked. She just kicked 3 guys in a huge muscle and she kicked their ass easily. She's not fucked. Even when the cop was, and the guy kidnapping her nephew was a cop, she still wasn't fucked. He wanted her to work for. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this storyline?
Yeah, it was overall probably my least favorite of the season, but I didn't, like you said, I didn't dislike it. And I do like how ultimately it does connect with the Belter storyline and the Marcos storyline. So it wasn't just for no reason, because throughout the season, I'm like, what exactly is the point of this storyline other than just to give Bobby Draper something to do? But I appreciated that at the end of it all, there is a connection there. And actually, one thing I'm going to nitpick on at the end of the storyline, I didn't hear anyone else say this, but she calls up Avasarella for help, and Avasarella is like, Bobby, your timing couldn't be worse, or something like that. I don't know. In other countries, we know when there's a big election, like, she wouldn't have known that Avasarella is not just lost the election. I mean, I find that hard to believe. I feel like that would be pretty big news on Mars, that there's a new Secretary General, but just a small nitpick. But overall, I was glad that they tied it together into something at the end, because throughout I was like, I don't know about this. But overall, I was okay with this storyline.
Darren, what were some of your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was curious. Again, it was one of those where I was, what is Bobby going to be up to? And I certainly thought that she was going to be joining up on the Rossi, especially seeing how everything was sort of crappy there on Mars. It's like, look, it's going by. They're saying hello. You could just, right up the well and, be good to go. So I was actually really bummed when they didn't. And yeah, I wasn't really sure where they were going to end up going with the storyline on hers, because it did seem so tertiary to everything else that was happening. But they made it work. They did reconnected it with all of the missing Martian tech stuff. I mean, I think you sort of get that hint early on, but that's really where those ideas are going on. And the idea of just sort of seeing how Mars is falling apart, but now that this identity of, all Mars and terraform and do all of this, and all these planets are now gone because there's pre-made planets already out there. You can just go and move on to that. So it is sort of an interesting idea of seeing how the effect, again, the larger effects of the gates and the worlds and that type of colonization possibility has to existing power structures. I mean, I thought that was a real interesting part to it. Other than that, I mean, I love seeing Bobby, but there wasn't most of the storyline was very tertiary. I did have to laugh at the end where she calls up Avasarala, and it's like, yeah, well, don't really have a job there now. And no, I didn't think of it, Akton, but that is an excellent point, especially if she just lost. That probably would have been big news. I mean, I don't see Bobby as like a big news watcher, but I still think that probably would have been.
Yeah, they were like, she has a hand terminal. There's fees all around here and Mars. She would have picked up on that somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
But I did think it was interesting that they did tie in the technology Bobby was selling directly to Marco, that they made it clear that he was the one buying it because she was hinting at, they're belters. So that I thought was a really nice touch. But anyway, Don, some of your thoughts on this one.
Well, as you know, Bobby, I love me some Bobby. But yeah, this time around, I was kind of like, they don't really have her doing shit. She goes back and decides she wants to kind of live a regular life, but like people know who she is, so she gets treated certain ways by certain people because some view her as a hero, others view her almost as a villain to a certain extent, and she's got people just basically fucking with her as much as they possibly can. So and as far as her joining the crime syndicate, I didn't really look at her as a joiner much as it was like, look, I need something to do to make money, and sometimes that's what happens, especially, like you said, Mars is basically collapsing at this point. People are going off world to find their opportunities, especially now with all these rings that have opened up. It's like, hey, there's nothing here for anyone to do. So if you're out of a job, all right, well, screw it. I mean, you can always find somewhere else to go. And the thing about it is that Bobby really loves Mars and doesn't want to leave it, but she's conflicted because it's like, well, damn, I love this place. This is my home. But financially, it might not make sense for me to stay here. And it's like, well, you're presented an opportunity to stay here and make some money, but it also kind of means betraying everything that you stand for. So, that was it was good to see the conflict, but again, as everyone has stated before, it was like, well, how does this feed into everything? And until the Marcos stuff starts popping up and it's like, okay, this has to go to this person and this person is buying that, then it's like, oh, got it. And so at the end, when you have that ship taking off, you have the showdown inside of that warehouse, then that's when everything starts to come together. And it's like, oh, now I see how it all connects. Now, as far as the Avasarala thing, honestly speaking, to me, it seemed like that was a message that had been there for a while, and Avasarala had just never checked it. Like, maybe that might have been there for a couple of days.
You're doing the whole different time periods excuse.
Yeah,
that they
so
use
I
in
think
Game of Thrones.
The storylines are running in. This isn't The Witcher, okay? I don't know.
Well, no, listen to me. The way that I interpreted it was that she called her before the election, and Avasarala was too busy dealing with the whole election thing, and then also her husband leaving her. And shout out to the new husband who's totally different now, who decided to leave.
What? Oh,
Yeah, the
It's a
actor.
different actor.
It's a different actor. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, don't worry, I'll get into that.
Okay, so
That confused me. Okay, I thought that.
yeah.
Okay,
To be
good.
perfectly honest, I completely forgot because it's been so long since I've seen the previous first 2 seasons that it was a different guy.
you know what's funny? My mom just started watching The Expanse, and so like I saw season 1 episode with Avasarala and the husband. I'm just like, wait, something. Oh, okay, that could happen. All right. So anyway, yeah. To me, the what I got from it was that Avasarala was busy, and that message was there, like maybe for a couple of days, not like weeks on weeks or anything. But
That's a
maybe
good way to
couple of
rationalize
days,
it and
like,
make excuses for it. I guess.
I'm telling you, I'm thinking we're gonna find out that message was sent like maybe like a day or two before the
I
end.
don't know if that tracks though. But anyway, I
Actually,
just
what you
wanted-
don't see is the scene right after when Bobby hangs up, goes, she leaves the message, that job's still available, I want it. Then she turns and sees the election results, and she's like, crap. More unemployment.
but anyway, I did like what you touched on, Don. Sorry, about the character arc. Her character arc was really interesting about her coming to terms with Mars being like, "Oh, I love Mars," and seeing how it's falling apart. Like, I totally agree, and that's why overall, even though I was the biggest fan of the storyline overall, I do like its inclusion. I think it adds to the show, having it rather than not having it, especially setting up for the help tying into the market storyline.
But I'm going to point out, Mark, for something in the chat.
Yeah.
Stephen
Podesta. That's what I was about to do.
Oh, do you want to go ahead and do it?
Yeah, sure. So Stephen was saying that I think it's it's the show Mars is in Terminal. I lost it. Hold on. I think it's the show Mars is in Terminal, like the Soviet Union in the 1990s when everything had its price, especially industry and weapons. And I think that's absolutely true. I think the show, even more so than the books, have always used Mars as a Soviet Union analogy. It's particularly with like the Cold War between Earth and Mars, and I think they're definitely following that. Now there's peace between them, but Mars is falling apart economically, and so I definitely think the show particularly is drawing a direct comparison there.
Yeah, no, I think that was a perfect comparison there. Because that's exactly what it is. I mean, well, it's not that the Soviet Union didn't have heavy unemployment even before the fall of the post-Cold War. But yeah, I think for the most part, showing how that, especially such a military power, is now everything's up for grabs. That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. So let's move over to the final storyline of Sorella, and let's talk about the actor change. We already touched on this. When I saw that first episode, I was like, "Who the hell is that guy? Why is she holding her hand? She's cheating on her husband." I was like, "Oh wait!" And someone pointed out in the chat that the original actor who played the husband in season 1 and 2, used to play Abu from Seinfeld in the first 3 seasons, and I would add, he also played Dr. Bashir's father in the episode of Deep Space Nine. Bashir, I like that actor. I think, and not just because he was in Deep Space Nine, but his the chemistry he had with Evan Sorrell, I think it worked. It felt natural. I did not like this new actor. They had to recast the actor because the original actor was busy doing a sitcom on NBC that got canceled. So that's fine. They have an excuse. But the one they got to replace him, he was too sort of swarm. And I didn't like I don't know, maybe it's me. I didn't like the fact he had a perfect American accent and he was very swarmy. I was like, oh, let's go sit and have dinner. He had a totally different demeanor, and I really didn't think it worked. It really bugged the hell out of me every time he appeared. I don't know. You said you didn't even notice it.
No, because I forgot. It's been so long since it's in season 1 or 2. I didn't even realize they recast him. So I didn't remember what her husband looked like. So
you liked him and didn't bother?
I didn't have any problem with him.
Yeah, I would say I'm kind of with Akton. I mean, I was there was some confusion because I knew that something seemed off, but it had been so long since I've seen the first couple of seasons that no, I hadn't. I hadn't recognized that it was actually a different actor, but I was like, is this the same? And I'm trying to imagine the old scenes with this new actor in those old scenes, and yeah, it was not clicking right in my head. So I don't know. I guess if you wait a couple of seasons, maybe half of us won't notice.
Well, I mean, it was funny because like when she goes to visit him, at his teaching job, I'm like, okay, why is she going to visit this professor? And I'm just like, wait, what? I'm like, no, this doesn't seem right. I had forgot it was that there was a different actor, whatever. But I was like, I don't remember her husband looking like this.
But I don't know if I liked what they did with them story-wise either, by them like breaking up at the end and totally being at odds with each other. And you could tell like she's like, "Oh, come to Luna with me." And he's like, "No, that's okay. I'm good here." You could tell like they were separating, and that didn't happen in the books, but it's not a book thing. It's kind of like I don't know if it works. So I like the relationship that they had earlier in the show. I don't know if this is a good step.
Well, you can't blame him because she was a total douchebag.
Well, all right, let's get into that part of it. Yeah, I want to get into this.
But see, I think to me that's the conflict, because he's acting like, oh, you crossed a line, you did something, you used something for used our son's death for political advantage, you did this, you crossed a line. She got one of her best friends killed just to reveal where the Mars stealth operations were. Was it in season 1 or 2? Her friend from Mars.
Season 1. Yeah,
totally got him killed, or
yeah.
or whatever. Was the actual his death was the result.
She didn't know she was going to get him killed. She knew he was going to get exiled from Mars. The kill thing was a surprise.
Yes, but still the point being is she has played hardball before. That was one of Avasarala's very defining facts, I think, right here, that she is able to sacrifice these things in order to get her point, in order for her win or whatever. So the fact that just bringing up her son's death upset him to the point that she had crossed the line, I found that really that was the one thing that I think really bothered me. It was like,
maybe he never really saw that side of her before, though. Like maybe he didn't know about all that stuff.
Well, yeah, but it made sense because I'm like, didn't you marry this woman?
Yes,
someone else did. You're the new one. Okay, that she got divorced and remarried in between seasons, and we didn't see that.
See, I'm with you, Darren. Like, I totally buy he'd be upset over it, but I think to the extent he was, like, she's done worse shit. She's done shady shit before. And I want to also talk about, because a lot of people didn't like her this season, didn't like her storyline, thought she was too much she was too rude, too much of an asshole. I personally didn't mind. I like seeing this different side of her. It shows what a conniving politician she is, and she's always been portrayed that way. We just see her in a different context this time. The context, she doesn't look so. The context in season 2 when she's telling these Martian assholes to shut the fuck up and do whatever the fuck she likes, that's an awesome context, but she's pretty much doing the same thing, but in a different context where she's yelling at her aides and telling them to fuck off when they're just trying to help them. But I think it's true to her character, and I like seeing this different side of her.
No, but I like it when she's doing that to people who deserve it, and she's telling I would have appreciated her character more if she can, like Amos is evil and mean to people who deserve it, but he's sweet and nice to people who deserve it. And like I would have appreciated that more for her, rather than her just being mean to her poor aides who all they're trying to do is help her. And she also, it felt to me like the entire season, all she did was go, shut the fuck up, get the fuck out, fuck off, get the fuck out, like over and over again. That was her whole, 90% of her lines were shut the fuck up and get the fuck out to people who didn't deserve it. They were just trying to help her. Like I am one who thought she was a complete bitch in this season.
Like, well, I do have a question.
Now, just real quick, Darren. Sorry. To be fair, I was maybe a bit more desensitized and prepared for that after, because that's how she was portrayed in the books. Throughout the entire book, she's always shitty to her aides, and they just brought it in this season for the show. But anyway,
they've never really shown that in the show. She's always that way to people who deserved it, not to just people who are trying to help her.
Yeah, I was actually wondering, and I don't know if we have an international audience that might be able to mention this, is because the first 3 seasons being on Sci-Fi, I know there was some swearing, but I think they had calmed it down from perhaps what the international release of the show was, that she might have sworn a bit more. I've just seen different editing things that have been different.
I don't feel like she's sworn a lot more because she always swore even on Sci-Fi.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Sci-Fi would change the fucks to damn and hell.
Yeah.
And stuff. But I always, like, you go back and you watch the first 3 seasons on Amazon right now, you'll see it has all the swear words in its full glory. It's all the fucks. And so a lot of people were complaining that, oh, she's swearing too much. But no, it's not. I don't think it was any worse than it was the first 3 seasons.
No, her swearing too much is not. I don't care about that.
Oh, no. And honestly, she had one of the best lines with her message to Holden, don't stick your dick in it. It's been fucked enough already. Come on. I mean, that is I'm paraphrasing probably slightly there.
No, I think that's it. Pretty much it exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think maybe the other thing is because she was dealing with a political situation so much this season, and we're used to seeing her dealing with like larger, big actual threats, and her re-election is so boring and uninteresting. You know, when she had to deal with the ship coming out and make those big decisions and so on, I think that's where she was in her element. But I think they just showed that she's not an elected official. No. She's never been elected before in her life. This is the first time that she has to, which seems odd to me. I thought she had an elected position.
Well, sorry, I kind of blanked out there, Dan. Did you mention what Belinda said in the chat?
I did not.
Okay, so let me mention that. Belinda in the chat says that she doesn't want to be in charge. She never has, because this is what happens when you're restricted by being in charge. She is miserable. And that's maybe a bit more clear in the books, but I think that's definitely the case. And I think maybe that's why she's a bit more miserable. I think she might have mentioned how she really didn't want to be the top one in charge. And I think season 3 kind of glossed over this when they put her in charge, which kind of annoyed me. But yeah, she always wanted to be the one behind the shadows, the second in command, pulling the string. She never wanted to be the top dog. And I can kind of get that. Not that
that makes sense.
Doesn't excuse her behavior, of course, but I think it might help explain it.
No. I think that sounds perfectly well. Belinda's brilliant, so she's usually straight on with her observations. But yeah, I think between being in charge and again the less interesting aspects of a political pursuit, just didn't make it one of the more resonating, exciting parts. It's important to see, and I'm sure, much like the Belter stuff, they're using this to set up the next season or next couple season storylines. And I'm glad that they did.
Yeah, this is all an invention of the show as well. And I thought it was better for it as well. But I also want to point out, Belinda says that she's worse in the books with their swearing and whatnot. Don't stick your dick in it is straight from the books, which it is. And I do think she was worse in the books. So I think there's complaining. I know it's not you, Akton, but I heard other people complaining about her swearing too much. And I was like, she's worse in the books. The show's actually downgrading it. But anyway, Don, your thoughts on the storyline?
Yeah, listen, I had no problem with what they did with Aristarella. This is the first time she's had to deal with a political challenge. You have someone who was working for her, actively working against her to take her job, and she kind of, to a certain extent, is starting to see the writing on the wall. Things are kind of coming off the rails. You got this situation with, terrorism. You've got squatters' rights versus a big-time corporation. You got people trying to run blockades. There are a lot of moving parts that she has to deal with that was like, yeah, this was much simpler when she was just kind of dealing out rations to people on Earth and trying to negotiate deals between Earth, Mars, and the Belt. So now it's like, well, shit, I got to deal with, this whole Holden situation where she thought that everything was going to be cool. She thought because she was behind James Holden that everyone else would be. and she's now realizing the same thing that James Holden has been realizing for a while, and that is, you know, the planets are filled with assholes who don't want to listen to reason. So, now she's in a situation where she's fighting for the one thing that she never really wanted, but because she has to, because she might be the only person qualified to deal with this situation in the correct manner. And yeah, every time that she thinks she's got a one up on her opponent, excuse me. Every time she thinks she's got a one up on her opponent pulls out something that's like, oh no, no, that was not the last trick. Here, I have another trick for you.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing I want to get into before we close out this discussion. Is Nancy Gal, her opponent? I almost side with her more than Avasarala. Like, if I was voting, I would vote for Nancy Gal because, like, especially the shit with like Avasarala trying to say, "Oh, she was on basic and she got her way out," and I thought Nancy Gal like smacked that down like so well, saying, "Actually, I was helping other people, and everyone who missed out for me, I helped them all out. They're working for me now," and I actually think she made great points about how this colonization is needed to relieve all this because Earth is overpopulated. And this is another good analogy I think the show makes, that Earth is very much a stand-in for like England during colonial times when that was ridiculously populated, and colonialism and colonizing other colonies actually helped England because it decreased the population, which was out of control, and so it gave people more free. So I actually agree with Nancy Gal, and I think Avasarala is being a bit too overly cautious. So aliens, smellians.
I'm actually kind of in between the two of them. Like, well, it depends if Nancy Gal was to do it conservatively and think things through and not just willy-nilly, woohoo, let's all go through the gate, which kind of seems like what she wanted to do. I also think she's never really been out there like Avasarala has. I don't know that she really understands what's going on out there. So I think she's a little naive. So I was actually kind of a happy medium. Like, they should let ships in, but cautiously, and let's send scouts and scientists ahead and things like that before you just like open up the floodgates. So I was actually kind of in between the two of them.
Yeah, I mean, and for me that was a thing because it's like, look, yeah, from the outside looking in, I'm pretty sure if we were voters living on Earth, where you got like, I forget what astronomical percent of the population is basically on government assistance. Yeah, someone tells me, hey, I can move off of this crowded ass planet. I can go get a job of my own and possibly, start a life and flourish. Yeah, I'm going, talking to that person. And it's like possibly, or not possibly, it's definitely because Avasarala has not been telling people about the whole deal with the proto molecule because you can't really, because if you start telling people,
she did let the incident on Illis leak, which I thought was actually a smart move on her part. I think that's getting back to her husband getting mad at her. He got mad at her for that, which I disagree. I think that was her best move. But of course that blew up in the face once Holden fixed everything, which I liked.
It's always a careful balance, of what decisions you're going to make. Is it going to play in your favor? Or is it going to not play in your favor?
So, Mark, I have a question for you. Since this storyline was invented for the show, is Nancy Gal in the books? Later?
All right, so in book 3, Nancy Gal is elected Secretary General, and Avasarala helps her get elected.
Okay.
So Avasarala
would have already happened by now.
Yeah, so Avasarala is not Secretary General at this stage in the books. Nancy Gal was, and Avasarala was like her second in command pulling the strings. But most of this sort of, which is mentioned in dialogue, and happened off screen, so to say.
Okay. With so much population on for general assistance and unemployed, I'm really curious what the YouTube of the future looks like. How many channels are on there? You have nothing to do but create your own studio. But I was actually, I had the impression, and I don't think this ended up being by the time that the season ended up, but I was sort of suspicious that Gal might be working with Marco in some manner, just because of the attack at the same time where they had the debate was going on, and I think Gal's response to that, backing up Avasarala's decision, was right, or the way that she responded to the death of everyone in the when she had that really kind of cool memorial. But I was kind of just curious for a while, and I'm hoping it's not that, but that Gal might have been working with Marcos sort of to undermine Avasarala's and get herself sort of elected and push for the exploration of the rings and sorting the Belters in that sense and so on. I don't know if that ever plays out or anything, but it was sort of a suspicion earlier on, the way that things were working out between Marcos's attack and Gal's response to them.
I'm ominously silent. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us.
I mean, you really want me to? Okay.
No. It's much like the proto-molecule underneath the deck. Something's gonna happen down the road. I'm happy to wait.
I would prefer if Nancy Gal wasn't working with Marco, because we already kind of did that with Aaron Wright. I mean, I don't know. Whatever. I'm sure we'll be fine. If
I'm just guessing.
I know. If that turns
Art's just not back to tell you what happens in the book.
If that turned out to be the case, I'm sure they would do it in a way that would be fine. But it seems a little redundant and cliche to me if they did go that way. Like, we already had Aaron Wright. Let's have Nancy Gal be good. I don't know. I don't know, but we'll see. Mark can just shut up and not say anything. But
yeah. So Belinda in the chat says Gal is young and inexperienced, but not totally wrong. Yeah, I guess I see that. But anyway, let's go ahead and close out this discussion now. Thank you guys so much. Before we take off, Don, let's start with you. Let's give our rating for the season between 1 and 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the worst. I had no idea, Don. Please tell me what do you give this season?
Wow, this was such a great season. There were a couple of things that I did have problems. Wow, if I had to put a number on the season, because I had no idea what number I was going to put it. I would say an 8.5.
All right, and Darren, how about you?
I'm gonna have to agree with Don right there. I think 8.5 is about where I was going. It wasn't a perfect season. There was a couple little points in there. My one personal jab, if I could make, is the whole the giant tsunami is coming at the alien structure, and they just sort of pull up a little piece of metal to block up all that water and pressure. That's the one scene and sequence that bothered me in the whole season. But I looked forward to every episode. I tried to piece it out bit by bit so I wouldn't blow through the whole season in a day and a half. I can't wait till 5. I think they did a great job. And again, if it was all on Illis in the book, I love that they expanded Bobby's and Avasarala's and kind of kept the momentum everywhere else going. I think it would have suffered if they had just focused on Illis. Great characters. They worked their budget really well. They made it engaging. 8.5.
Now, really quick, I want to chime in because I forgot to mention something. I mentioned something real quick. Were you guys as excited about the death slugs as I was? Because I noticed from the books when I was worried they wouldn't do the death slugs, and when they did them, I was like, yes, death slugs! Like, how scary is that? Like, slugs that kill you by poison if you touch them. Like, I fucking love the death slugs. I don't know if you guys had a strong opinion on this.
Oh, they were super creepy, and I loved the discovery that something was wrong, and they peg up with the special light, and suddenly they're everywhere. I mean, it's like, of course, there's got to be one more thing inside here. It's not going to be.
Yeah, no. I'll tell you what though. Like, I like the death slugs, but that was the point where I was like, okay, they got to stop here with the dangers. And because if they did one more thing, it would have been like, okay, this is ridiculous. Yeah, it would be like remember the movie Speed with Keanu Reeves in the 90s, where like one thing kept happening after the other, and then at the end of it was where he gets the call like the train is off the tracks, the train can't stop. I'm like, really? That's just I've just lost all belief in this film now. So like the slugs were fine, but if they had done one more thing, I'm like, okay, there's a little too much danger now.
Oh yeah. Having everyone kind of just underneath these tarps, just huddled together, like, oh my God, we're going blind and there's death slugs.
Yeah, they're going blind. There's death slugs. The ships are floating in the air. One ship is attacking the other. They can't get back up to the ships. They're stuck there. I mean, that was plenty. But if they had done one more thing, it would have been like, all right.
I agree.
Yeah, I definitely. And to be fair, I think the books definitely read that way to me. Like, I did like it. I thought it was super intense, but I was like, all right, guys, you're just doing one thing after another that keeps going wrong. But I still liked it. It was maybe part of the reason why it's my least favorite book, but I still enjoyed it. Still thought it was tense. But anyway, Atkin, I actually know because I watched your review, but anyway, your rating.
Yeah, I already gave a rating for it in my review, but I gave it a 9. So I'm going a full 9. I'm not messing around with this 8.5 stuff. I'm going all out. The 9. I thought it was a very strong season. As I said at the top, I didn't think there was any like blow you away scenes like we've had in each of the previous 3 seasons. Even season 3, which I didn't like as much, had some really intense, really powerful scenes that this didn't. But I just thought it was strong all throughout. So I give it a good solid 9.
Yes, and I too give it a 9 out of 10. And John and Darren knows in the chat 8.5. Come on, guys, go the full distance. I think 9 is also what I gave season 3, and I'm sticking with that because, as I said, they're both kind of on par with me. I do think this didn't quite approach 10ness to me. Because as I said, there was nothing that really blew my socks off like there was in previous seasons. There was no Miller talking to Julie Mallon, Arrow says a crash on Earth moment, although, to be fair, I don't think that moment can ever be topped. But season 3 had a lot of great moments like that too, and I think season 4 didn't quite do it, although I did really enjoy the Miller bot and the confrontation between Holden and Murtry at the end. That was cool, but didn't quite reach that. But the season was consistent throughout. It was, to me, there was no filler episodes in the season, which I think is the first season not to have filler episodes. Like the fucking what's his name? Epstein Drive in Mars in season 2. This is how I made the Epstein Drive.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Nobody cares.
Remember that stupid kid in the season 1 and the like what the hell? You know what I'm talking about?
With his uncle. Yeah, no, that was Diago. Yeah.
Who also was like, who are you telling the story to? You're never seen again.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I was just thinking about that today. Like when I was, like I said, my mom just started watching it, and so I was watching one of the episodes, and they're doing. I think it was when they were. When they were trying to track the proto-molecule ship where Miller is on it. And I was just thinking about the whole thing with the Epstein Drive. I was like, man, it's like 100 years later, that dude is still, flying through space.
But anyway, yeah. So yes, I think this. I just think this is one of the better seasons. I really, and I have high hopes that season 5 is going to be even better. Some people in chat mentioned that. You know how some people mentioned that book 4 was their least favorite books. A lot of people's favorite book is book 5. Me, I'm still book 3 guy. Which I'm disappointed the show didn't quite do that justice. Maybe that's why I'm overly protective of that. But I still enjoy. Actually, I like book 6 a lot, but book 5 and 6 are kind of a 2-parter. So I wonder how they're going to feed that in. But anyway, I'm so excited to see what they do in season 5. I can't wait. Do you guys have any parting thoughts on what you hope to see in season 5?
The churn. I want to go. I want Amos's back. I think we're ready for Amos's, real backstory. This has been something that we've talked about for a while. I think he's at the point to do it. We have a threat to Earth. Maybe that brings people back. That's what I'm hoping. Again, not having read the books and have any idea of what's going on.
We've got little bits of it in the show. I remember him mentioning he was from Baltimore. I remember that. staying like little, but yeah, not as. I don't think in the show at least that we have gotten his real like full backstory.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's something that at least at some point is really going to be dived into a little bit more. But outside of that, look, I am never disappointed by The Expanse. They constantly make it, interesting and unexpected and engaging. And after Star Wars, I went and watched The Expanse, and I felt so much better afterwards. So this show means a lot, and I really can't wait to see what the next story is they're going to tell us.
Well, listen, I didn't go see Star Wars, and I'm glad that I watched The Expanse instead. So, yeah, man, listen, I think next season, obviously hope to open up new worlds and just see how they, see if anyone actually listens to fucking James Holden, okay? Just one person with some sense.
No one ever listens to Holden. All right, cool. So thank you guys so much for joining this discussion. It's so great talking about this show. So awesome. So let's quickly go by for what you guys are all up to. Where we're at. Darrin, we'll start with you.
Darrin, I host D's Reviews. I'm on a little bit of break actually until February, where we're going to do the second half of The Walking Dead. Then we'll have Westworld Season 3 later on in the year, and, of course, the final season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. this summer. Please come subscribe. I do occasionally little visits over on this channel, too, and talk with Mark and Akton and Don. So it's always a good time. And thanks, as always, for having me over here chatting with you, Mark.
Cool. Thanks a lot. And Don, what are you up to?
Listen, honestly, I haven't been up to much. I know, you know what? I got a new job about a month ago, and I'm just kind of settling into that. But I do want to get back into doing some more videos and live streaming because I like live streaming and stuff. So yeah, I'm probably going to be doing a lot of the shows that Darrin is doing. Maybe with the exception of The Walking Dead. I'm not sure I'm going to be doing that one. But yeah, but definitely Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I gotta do that because that is probably my favorite show ever, for no good reason. But yeah, look, Mark, hopefully you'll have me back next time there is something interesting to have me back for. And thank you everybody in the chat, and Darrin, Akton, love you guys. All right, Mark, take it away.
All right, well, I can take it away.
I can. So, like Darrin, I'm going to probably take a little bit of a break. But if you haven't caught up with all the things that I've done, a lot. The channel's been pretty busy, as busy as it's ever been in a while. Over the last month or two. So if you haven't already, check out my stuff on Mr. Robot. Check out my stuff on Watchmen. Check out my stuff on His Dark Materials. Just to do a review on Witcher Season 1, coming from the perspective of someone who has never heard of the books until this show came out. So check that out. As far as what's coming up in the future, I think one thing that I am going to do probably pretty soon, this is a big announcement right here. The first time ever I'm going to do what Mark typically does, which is the top 10 shows of 2019. So I'm going to do my own version of that. That should be coming very, very soon. And then I also, for subscribers of my channel, if you're a subscriber, I've got a big channel update, big exciting news about my channel, which I'm going to save for that particular update. So keep an eye out for that. And show-wise, I think the next thing I'll probably do would be Star Trek Picard, which premieres January 23rd. And so I'll probably, until that, I'm going to be in a little bit of a break. But catch up with all the other stuff I've done if you haven't already.
Deep Space Nine. Gotta do it. You gotta do Deep Space Nine. Maybe after
one day. I need to take a break right now. I'm just. I need to get back to working on my second book. I've been doing way too much in the TV world. I have to take a break from it a little bit. So Deep Space Nine will be sometime in the future.
All right, cool. So I'm Mark. My channel is Enchantment of Eternity. As Akton alluded to, I will be doing my top 10 favorite shows. I've watched 25 shows this year, so I'm going to count down my top 10 favorite. And also, later on, I'm going to do my top 10 favorite shows of the entire decade. I'm going to do that one as well. And other than that, I'm just going to be all Expanse all the time. I'm going to finish my coverage of the Expanse with the review on every single episode, a book to show comparison on every single episode, and then I'll get into Picard once that comes out, and then I'm going to start covering Star Trek The Next Generation monthly as well. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you next time.